Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sustainability Snapshot. And today we have Anisha KRISHNAKUMAR with us on this episode. Hi. I would rather you introduce yourself rather than me butchering up what you do. So, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Isha. It's just been so great to be on this podcast with you. And I appreciate everything that you're doing for the energy transition and for clean energy. So I'm really excited to see where the series goes. So I'll start off with a little background about me. I currently work as an associate at Rocky Mountain Institute, RMI, and my role is in industrial decarbonization. So in a nutshell, what that means is I do a whole lot of research, analysis, and strategy to help companies in the refining and chemical space to solve their decarbonization challenges. How I got here is I recently graduated from Duke with a master's degree in engineering management in December last year. And over there, I spent a lot of time researching and building my network in clean energy and sustainability, and leading initiatives like the annual Energy Week at Duke and a sustainability club at Pratt were some of the big highlights that helped me break into this industry. And other than that, my background is in chemical engineering. I have a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from National Institute of Technology in Warangal, back in India. And I worked at ExxonMobil for 3 years as a process engineer and in engineering management roles.
That's so interesting. Moving from ExxonMobil, so like oil and gas, into renewables or sustainability. I have so many questions for you. How was the transition from like oil and gas, I'm assuming, and Exxon to like moving into sustainability, and what made you move in that direction?
Yeah, great question. Looking back at the journey, I feel like I can really connect the dots now. And it has definitely been a sort of challenging one to transition from an industry that did the total opposite of what I'm doing now. So sometime into the career in oil and gas, like in those 3 years, I got more and more familiar with the bigger picture of a lot of the objectives of the hydrocarbons industry. And it started out as a job that was a means for me to apply my technical knowledge. But in the longer run, I wanted to work in an industry that really aligned with my own core values. So I felt like clean energy was the place to be. And that could have taken the shape of any company. Like a lot of companies who are traditionally in oil and gas are also pivoting to clean energy, which is super promising. But for me, it took the form of going back to school and getting my master's degree, and in the process of it, exploring this pivot of my own career. So a lot of what helped me is equipping myself with the technical knowledge, first of all, and really understanding the landscape of the clean energy industry, figuring out what are the different technologies that exist, in what stage of ideation or implementation they're in. And that's just one side of the equation. Another large part of what helped me was building out my network. And I cannot stress enough on how fantastic a place Duke is to do that. And like you would have also experienced, there's just so many amazing folks working in this industry whom we're able to meet through events at Duke. So speaking with them, doing informational interviews and learning from them, it all led to me being able to intern at RMI last summer. And I always credit them for taking the chance on me, which really gave me that big break into working in this industry. I did a few projects related to workforce development in the global south for the energy transition. And from there onwards, it was just a journey upwards. And I'm really happy to be back at RMI earlier in February this year to continue my work with them on industrial decarbonization now.
I'm really glad you got that first great break with RMI, like such a reputable institute, and that you were able to get back into it full time also. So kudos to that. So whenever you introduce yourself to like non-industry folks or someone who doesn't really understand sustainability per se, how do you think they perceive what you're doing versus what you really do day to day?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've seen a lot of different types of responses. One would be related to the type of work that I'm doing. So it's seen as like this whole consulting lifestyle where people perceive that all you do is make presentations, do a bunch of Excel sheets, and just travel around. But that's kind of a misconception because the culture at RMI is very different. A lot of the work I do is so relevant to a lot of the work I've done in the past, which means I'm still able to apply a lot of chemical engineering fundamentals on the job. And I really want to credit all my mentors at ExxonMobil who really helped me figure out that foundation and get a solid understanding of it. So for instance, just the other day, I was applying a bunch of thermodynamics and process engineering to understand what parts of a refinery can be electrified. And it all goes into the bigger picture where electrification could be an intermediate transition solution for decarbonizing a hard to abate sector like petrochemicals. So when I'm able to put in such examples and then explain my work and how it connects to the bigger picture, it then busts a lot of myths about what a consultant does. And another instance is like people just not believing in climate change. But
oh God, don't get me
fortunately, I think it's a lot lesser now than before. And I've just seen that in such conversations, the best way to approach it is to actually acknowledge the fact that they may not believe in climate change, and then like try to understand where they're coming from, and then talk about your own perspective with logical points and examples that have been proven. So it helps both of you come to a middle ground and a sort of understanding where they're able to appreciate the whole theory of climate change better. And I think I learned a lot of this conversational technique from the negotiations class at Duke. So it's amazing how in so many different ways, even these courses you take at school come into play, even in the industry.
Moving on to the next question. So what does your Vision 2030 or Vision 2035 look like, since 2020 and COVID was such a whole mess?
So I think a lot of difference is just made by coming to the table with an open mindset and a learning approach. So just like you mentioned about a lot of industries in the US, even back in India, coal is a big part of the energy security of the country, right? And there are entire regions and states in the country up in north that rely on coal mining for their livelihoods. So while all of these people and this workforce is engaged in a certain industry, and on the other side, we see this whole need for a transition, it's essential that this entire workforce is a part of the transition and is able to help solve this challenge rather than just alienating them, because it would just help solve this challenge faster. So one of the things that I would like to envision is along the lines of this goal of 50% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030, which became a well-known thing through the IPCC report, and is a big target for all companies and organizations across the globe. So it's definitely an ambitious path, and there needs to be massive change on a systems level to really get there. And a big part of who can help us get there is the workforce who is currently in the industry. And while there are ambitious plans, like even in India, there's a mission Green Hydrogen, where the government recently announced to commit around 19,700 crore rupees towards this mission. And over a span of 7 years, it can really accelerate the production of green hydrogen in India and export, and set up India as a big player in this new industry. And on the other hand, there's a lot of people engaged in traditional industries right now. So there's a clear gap in the workforce development aspect. And I feel like there's a lot of knowledge that can be brought into this space about upskilling a lot of the workforce to be able to make that transition themselves. And through my work right now in the clean energy industry and my work in the oil and gas industry in the past, I feel like I'm able to see both sides of the picture. And having made my own transition, I want to be able to scale this and create a larger impact for India or whichever country it is. But I honestly feel like the global south has a big role to play in the transition because of the bigger impact that we also stand to face from not being able to achieve these climate change goals.
You're like at the perfect position to understand both sides. And I feel like you mentioned, like in the global south, it's as important because they stand to face more adversity because of climate change related activities, but also they're also the largest population. Like India just became the most populous country. So if you can make like a system level change in a couple of countries that have that kind of populations and take it from there, it makes a lot more sense and the transition will happen faster. And like you mentioned, alienating them or just telling them what to do is really not the answer. Like that's what the West has been doing for all. So it would be easier if we can work with them to make that transition rather than, like a lot of developing nations are coming to terms with being financially independent now, like a lot of people, and they are getting access to like say cars or energy and all of that. And suddenly now you're going to come and say, don't use coal, don't use petrol, which the West has been using for how long? So if we can help them transition smoothly, that's a way better way than just being like, figure a way out, but this is not how you're going to do things suddenly now. So for sure. And then just to wrap this episode up, is there anything you want to plug or something new you learned or anything you'd want the audience to know?
Yeah, great question. And in the spirit of all the ambition that we want to bring to the table as early career women in this clean energy industry, I'm reminded of this advice that we heard yesterday in the Women in Energy panel that we attended. So it was Dr. J who stepped up and mentioned that for women in this industry, where historically in oil and gas we've seen it to be more male dominated, there are 3 really essential things we need to look out for. That is, number 1, find a mentor. Number 2, find a role model. And number 3 is find a sponsor to help you navigate through your career. And I could resonate a lot with her advice because having been in the industry for over 3 years now, I've seen that mentors play such a big role. And a big part of it is that mentors don't just need to be people who look like you or speak like you. It could be anyone from whom you're able to take a lot of learnings and increase your own knowledge and your network. So finding a mentor and learning from them has been super beneficial. And I've also been working to give back a lot to the community by sharing my own knowledge from the past 3 years. And the other 2 things which you also mentioned, like finding a role model whom you can really look up to and model your own career and your own ambition to stay inspired and motivated, is also essential. And a sponsor is someone who you can look up to, who can advise you, but also open a lot of doors for you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being on this episode, and it was really nice. And you gave us a lot of things to think about, and we'll definitely get back to you soon. Thank you so much for being on this video, and hope I talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Isha.